Well, welcome everyone to today's episode of TMI Advice You Didn't Want. Today we have two very special guests, and we're so excited to jump into their story of their spiritual walk, their spiritual awakening, and just their story, let's be honest. So, in case we haven't met, my name is Karen. I'm one of the co-hosts here.
And my name is Ashley, and I am so excited for John and Connie to join us today. They are two wonderful people that I met in a mind model certification and just fell in love with them instantly. And then it was probably like 6 months to a year later on a Zoom conversation, we started talking about spirituality. And they opened up, and I opened up, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. One more thing to connect about. So I am so excited to have this conversation on our podcast today.
Yeah, and for me, I remember Ashley, you told me whenever you had that conversation with both of them, and you were just like, oh my God, you have to talk to them about their spiritual stuff because it's so freaking fascinating. So, yeah, and it is. It's super fun. I'm so excited to bring these two to you. So, John and Connie, let us know a little bit about how maybe you started in this spiritual journey and kind of where it's led you.
Oh boy. Well, we each had very different starts.
Right.
So my very first, oh, okay, my mother was my very first start. She told me her mother had passed away when she was young, and like 15, and her mother came back to visit her in the night, and they,
Hmm.
had a conversation for a while. She was really broken up, as you might expect. But the fact that her mother came back and, consoled her and told her everything was going to be okay, and told her, there's a heaven is real, and, she'll see her later, and that kind of stuff, that was so real to her. And it became real to me. It was a fact. It wasn't a story. And she'd had one or two others. She talked to me about one time going out with her father when she was real little and to look at the full moon. And she said there were four angels around the moon.
Hmm.
And wow, okay. And then so I had that, and then I had what they were saying in church, and the stuff that I
Hmm.
heard in church just, it didn't make sense to me. I mean, even as a little kid, it was like there's something not right about this, but I just didn't. It didn't fit. So you know, you know, she didn't go. They didn't go to church much. They sent me to Sunday school and thought that was cool to do. And we had a carpool, and so I went to Sunday school and hung out with the other kids, and it was social, and I like that. And but at some point that stopped, and then I saw Kreskin on TV, and he was, if you never heard of him, he was a mentalist. He was basically a magician that did mental tricks. He also could do some pretty freaking good card tricks, but his, even though they were tricks, it got me, I didn't believe they were tricks at first. And so it got me really thinking about, well, what can we do with our mind? And
Hmm.
I had realized there was this huge fascination with, what is it capable of, what are we capable of with our minds? And then in high school, I read a book by Robert Monroe called Out of Body Experiences, or Journeys Out of
Hmm.
Body, or something like that. But he was like one of the pioneers in that. And I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't understand it, but I wanted to know more about it. And I did
Fast forward to college.
fast forward. Well, yeah, learn transcendental meditation as a senior, and then fast forward to college, and I meet a guy, and I'm boarding in a fraternity house, and I was talking to one of the guys, and they said, "Oh, you need to talk to Craig. He does that stuff." and and I talked to him, and yeah, he had an experience where he had a dream about being at work, and this lady walked in the room, and said, so and so is going to have a baby. One of their other coworkers.
Hmm.
And so he woke up. I forgot the dream, and he was at work sometime shortly later, and he's talking to this guy, and he had a deja vu experience, and he looked at the guy, and he said, so and so is going to walk in that door, and she's going to say that so and so is pregnant or just had her baby. I think it was just had her baby, like just delivered the baby. And it happened, and the guy looked at him and just said, get out. But, and he told me a couple other experiences he'd had, and he was part of a program, an organization that was teaching people about their spiritual nature and some really practical applications of that, to make their lives better. And so he took me to an introductory lecture of that organization, and guess who was there?
Oh, that's how you guys met. I don't think I fully knew that.
Yeah.
And you've been,
I'd been doing this for quite a few years before this, before I met John. I had the usual upbringing, and it was kind of crazy like everybody else's life. And I can remember my father taking me out of school one time and taking me to a psychic. And it was actually, he talked about my brother who was deaf, and saying that the reason why he was deaf was because he had been with Attila the Hun, and his claim to fame was cutting off people's ears. Who knows?
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, but I thought that was kind of interesting and cool. But fast forward to I was about 14, and I was having to have my second tonsillectomy. And I could see the writing on the wall with the parents starting into some interesting things that I didn't want to be involved with, but mental issues. And but my father took me to this to a house that a bunch of people were in, and the founder of this organization walked up to me and went, "Do not do anything until I talk to you. You need to come back and see me in a few minutes." And he said, "You will stay here." And it's kind of like, stay, because I had told nobody that I was going to check out during the tonsillectomy. I had already had all the plans made and everything. I was going to go ahead and code on the table. And he came to me and he said, "I will be there for you no matter what. Just hang in there. I know what you're going to be going through. I'm always just a phone call away." And he was, because I called him several times for various different things. But he helped me get through that whole transition period. And then I met John, and here we are. I don't know how many years later. This was in
let's call
75.
it 48, something like that. It was 1975. It was
So
November.
next year will be 50 years that we've been together. So we'll age ourselves real quick
I'm
there.
forgetting the date, but I think it was November 10th of
11th.
11th. Okay, November 11th, 1975. Yep.
Yeah. So it was kind of it's been quite a journey.
I should say so. I've not heard this story from you before, Connie. So I love that this person was intuitive enough and knew what was going on. That is super, super cool.
Yeah.
And that you listened as well.
Yeah. Well, and I knew that he's one of those people that there was something there that he and I had very special. And it was never sexual, was never any of that stuff. But I used to go and sit when they had these week-long camps up in Iowa. And I went a couple of times, and I would sit while he was doing the nightly roundup with all the leadership. And I got to be a part of that. He'd go, "What do you think about that?" And then I'd go, "Well, what question is, what about this?" And so I got to learn coaching at 15, 16 years old, before it was even called coaching. And so this gave me a lot of self-confidence, but it also was a protected bubble that he kept me in and kept me sane during that time. It was crazy shit.
And he was, since you mentioned coaching, he was a very, very good coach, a very strong coach, in that, one of his principles, and he, I can remember him telling me this. He said, sometimes you can see what, how somebody is sabotaging themselves. You can see what they're doing to themselves, and they can't see it. The worst thing you can do is to tell them what they're doing, because you rob them of the learning experience. And they're just you're actually postponing it for them. You're making, it may be years, or it may be lifetimes before they get that set up again, to learn that lesson. So way, way better to just ask them a question, you know, that maybe gives them a little hint or leads them in the right direction, but do not tell them.
Right.
And wow, well, I mean, you know, there's very few coaches today, I think, that really understand that.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
so
That's it.
right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a similar story to that with a mentor that all of us shared. I was having difficulty with coaching people and with friendships of helping people move through. And he's like, well, you kind of come in with all the answers like a whirlwind. And you're like, say their problem is their shirt and they're wearing a red shirt and they don't want to wear a red shirt. They want to wear a blue shirt. And you're like, well, that's an easy fix. You just take off the shirt and put on the blue shirt because you've already been through that process. You already know the answers. You already know that you can take off your shirt and put on a different shirt. But what your friends and your coworkers are experiencing is you coming in, ripping a shirt off of them. They're now standing there before you naked, being like, what the fuck? Like, what did you just do? Why am I now without a shirt? And then you're putting on a blue shirt. And you're like, there you go, you're fixed. And they're just kind of like, yeah, that wasn't enjoyable. Thank you. And
No.
so, yeah.
And then they shut down.
Yes.
Because that's your first reaction. You're going to shut down.
Or
Yeah.
or they put the red shirt back on and now they're convinced they'll never, ever, ever change it because
That's true. Yeah. So yeah, that was a
they don't want
learning
to
lesson.
repeat
Well,
that.
and they can't change.
No.
Yeah.
They
It was-
really can't
They didn't
because
understand it.
they didn't understand what the
Or
whole process is behind
own
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not lasting because I did it for them and
Right.
they're not grateful or thankful to me at all because I just
Correct.
made them naked. So
In fact, they're scared of you at that point and
Yes.
really will not listen to whatever wisdom, even though it's the best stuff ever invented. No.
exactly.
Mhm.
So another part of this is, you know, I'm continuing things that we learned well over 40 years ago,
Mhm.
and things that person said or questions he asked, I'm still unpacking, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
new layers of it. And one of the things that I've had to in myself had to get over was because I had learned these things and they worked so well and made so much sense for me in the world. I got to thinking that I knew better. I knew more than other people. You know, and that made me a little somehow more better or more spiritual or something. And I think, you know, that's a real trap in the competition in spiritual things. There's no really place for competition. We're all growing at our own pace and we're figuring stuff out. But what I've come to understand now more recently with the training that we shared is this idea of having a framework, and that whatever our set of beliefs is, it's a framework that we use to understand things. And you know, none of us can claim to know everything. In fact, that's one of the things we were taught is you know, you can't prove anything that's not physical. Nobody can prove it. You know, there's no measurements that, you know, you can't weigh a soul or see it or measure it in any way. So, you know, it's just,
all faith.
you just have to accept that there are things that can't be proven, and you have to, that's where trusting what's our inner, you know, our nature. And so I was, so there's certain distinctions that really cause a shift for people, a shift in the way we think and the way we see things. And for me, the beginning, the baseline was hearing it at that introductory lecture that, you know, just try this on. If it doesn't work for you, fine. You know, don't just throw it away like that's wrong or whatever, but because it's not what you believe, just put it on a shelf, and maybe some point in the future, something will happen, something will shift, and all of a sudden it will make sense. And, you know, that has happened for me many times. But it was this idea of, you don't have a soul, you are one. You're not a body with a soul. You're a soul inhabiting a body. And the body is kind of like I've always, the model I was using for a long time was a vehicle. You know, it's an anchor. It keeps us here. It keeps us, it anchors the soul to the physical plane so we can have this experience. But I more recently came up with this idea of it being a user interface, and I really like that. You know, we didn't have computers when I learned all this. The internet didn't exist, but the idea of a user interface where we're kind of this, the way I envision it, we're this really big entity that in order to have this experience, it's like peeping through a keyhole. You know, what the experience that we're having through our body is a very, very limited part of what we're fully capable of spiritually. But in this plane, that's what we need. You know, it's so we can experience it. And
Yeah, I like, sorry.
that framework just really works for me. And you know, that was some other things, make sense of things that I could never make sense of with my, you know, the traditional religious beliefs that I was taught.
And we
Yeah.
know that we came in here together with a contract, just like you two with your significant others. You came in here the contract, or you still wouldn't be with them. Because look how many people have floated in and out of your lives. You're there for a certain period of time, and they're gone.
Oh my God, I just got massive chills as you're saying that, because recently I was in a conversation with somebody that I had just met, and she's all about this kind of stuff too. And I was telling her about how a lot of times with Matthew and myself, one of us will do something and then somehow the other person comes along in the strangest ways. And I can't quite explain all the things. Well, one of the ways is that recently I was brought into a specific, it's called coherence healing. And I was brought into another group. And as a result of me going there, it was like Matthew was like, hey, what about me? And somehow, in some divine, crazy way, he got brought to the exact same place at the exact same time. So you talking about that whole contract thing is like, yes, like there's something about, there's a divine connection. And I think that there's that divine connection between all four of us here too, because we've been in this plane together. And I don't know about you guys, but I love learning from you guys. I love learning from each of you. There's so much to learn from all the different experiences that everybody's had. And it's just, it's fun. Like that's, for me, it's the fun. I'm all about the fun.
Yeah. And it is.
Well, I think
go ahead, Ashley.
Well, just what John was saying too about how we may like learn something and it might not fit at the time. Like I think that's the whole point of conversation and friendships, is having that continuous community and really being able to like learn. I used to be against Reiki and think it was from the devil and think it was evil, and now I'm a Reiki master. And so I think the whole point is to have people around us that we love. We may not love everything that they share, we may not love everything they believe, but we love them as individuals, and it keeps us open and growing and changing and flowing through all of that. And it's when we cut off those conversations and those relationships where we don't see perfectly eye to eye, that's when really bad stuff starts happening.
Because everybody that's put here in front of you is for a lesson. And you're gonna bump up against that lesson until you finally learn it. And then it's going to come back around and hit you in other areas until you've got the whole picture. And sometimes that does take a couple of lifetimes, quite frankly. And well, and I remember one time too, speaking of some of this, we were in the middle of a intimate moment and he called me by a different name.
Whoops.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
I remember things right there.
It wasn't the name of another girlfriend of mine either.
No.
So that's
that's
a saving grace.
Right. If it had been, we would have had that would have been another conversation.
So I have to put a slight pause in this. So another part of this program that we're part of is it was so empowering was very, very early on. In fact, like in that lecture, one of the things they mentioned is that we all, when we come into a physical body, we've made an agreement with our parents to provide the body. We've also contracted with high souls. They go by many names. Some people call them guardian angels, you know, in the religious realm, that's what they're called. High souls or ascended masters or just guides. I think we share the word guides because, you know, it makes sense. And they're people that have, you know, they're further down the road. You know, it's like when you're a first grader and you look at a senior in high school, it's like, oh my God, I'll never get there. Right. It's kind of like that. And they know a lot of stuff and they've done a lot of stuff, so they can guide you. And so we have these that come with us, and
that we've contracted with.
And they're always with us, and they're much more able to help us and communicate with us when we are relaxed and just really
In meditation.
being ourselves.
Mhm.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you hear a beautiful
Had
piece of
wild
music, or you hear
experiences.
something, you see a beautiful sunset, something that really inspires you. You might get goosebumps. That's what again, my framework is that's them coming close, and they've got a higher level of energy than I do. And so that extra energy, stimulates my nervous system and gives me the little chills. So
Confirmation is
we
how
learned how to ask them questions and get yes or no answers with, they don't tell us what to do, but they can help us. And so when we had this experience, we turned to that to help sort it out. And so,
yeah, because it could have been a game changer.
Mm.
But what we finally figured out is where that came from, and what life it was, and what kind of happened, and we started getting some clarification out of that, so that we could go, oh, okay, cool. That was one life we were together, and and I don't think we've had any others that we've really
nothing else has come up that
No.
needed dealing with. That was just I had in that lifetime I had disappeared and never come back. I'd gotten killed. She didn't know where I'd gone. So there was an emotional charge
still
attached to
that.
me. And when that name came out, it was like it triggered part of that.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
so, we just kind of put that, okay, that's done.
Right. And
Yeah.
it really brought a new aspect to our relationship, and kind of clarified some feelings in me that I wasn't that I was clingy or doing something that was not healthy in the relationship. Once I figured out what it was and got clear on it, it was like, oh, cool. Yeah. And then that aspect moved on.
And
That's
for
really
it was more of a confirmation, because I've been hearing about that, that we come through this school many times to, advance and grow. And, at some point, then, we move on. But this idea of other lives was just an idea for me until I had that connection. And I know some people really delve into it and they do past life regressions, and I think it's what's been made fun of a bunch, that somebody was always, when they find out about their past lives, they were always the king or the emperor or Cleopatra or something, and nobody was ever a maid or a
Goat farmer. What was that one?
Oh, in the there was a Burt Breathed was the cartoonist. It was Bloom County, and one of the cartoons, the little kid's talking to his dad who's trying to sleep, and he said something about him being a one-eyed goat albino goat herder, armadillo herder.
Right.
That went on the refrigerator for a few
Yeah,
years.
for a long
Yeah. Wow, that's quite specific too. An
Right.
armadillo farmer.
I never knew there was armadillo farmers, but apparently there were.
But I mean, when people are looking for past lives, they're looking for some, big, many times, having been something important or glorious, rather
Right.
than having been something very plain that learned a very important lesson,
Right.
which was really, kind of the point.
Right.
Yeah.
Why we're here. So
Yeah. It's
we're
really
sorry. Have you guys found like you've dove into your past lots, or just like past lives, or just with that one specific situation?
I have some more probably than
more
him.
than me.
I was in Germany when I was 18, and there was this castle that was on the Rhine, and they were, they gave us a little map of, how the castle or the fort looked. They were wrong. They were so totally wrong. I even showed them where there was a secret door that had a passageway out that ran, out, that was part of the escape route.
That's so cool.
And, just things like that, I have a lot of those stories because they come easily to me. It's like deja vu. You walk into some place or you meet somebody, you two, that we just hit it off. We've known each other before, and we're probably going to know each other again. And how comforting is that?
Also, the funniest thing, because you guys don't know this, we just recorded a podcast and we were talking about deja vu. And you guys, both of you, each one of you said deja vu. And I know Ashley picked up on it because we both just kind of smiled and laughed at each other each time it happened. And it's just really funny. Like I look at little winks, little nods like that from the universe. And it's like,
Right.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. This is
Yeah.
just, this
Right.
is part of the fun. This is part of the process.
Well, and it kind of keeps me on track.
Mm,
I kind of know where, kind of looking out, who do I need to talk to?
mhm.
Who is my apprentice? Who do I need to learn from?
Yeah.
And that's how I go into each meeting or whatever conference, wherever we're at, is who do I need to connect with?
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
It's even cool, like I'm sure you guys have heard of the book The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. Have you heard that? Yeah. And I haven't picked it up for 10 years. And I picked it up and it's all about being a connector.
Right.
And my self-awareness now of me being a connector is different than it was 10 years ago. And I'm like, holy cow, like this is hitting to a whole new level, especially as someone that plans to build and has built on social media. Like it's crazy how like things come into your life in weird ways. Like I was at the bookstore with my daughter and she was reading a book, so I'm like, okay, let's go find some random books to check out that I don't have. And I walk by the shelf and the tipping point is like standing out at me like, you have to pick me up. And I'm like,
Right.
I have you at home, I've read you. Like, no, I'm gonna go find other books. And it just was like this compelling, like, no, I'm what you need to read right now. And I'm half done the book. Like it's like, what? Like it's so weird how things come into our life like that. And again, you never stop learning from simple things. Like I could completely be like, I've read you, I've learned all I can from you, and we're not going back there. So yeah, I love that.
Well, and amazingly, when we do come back around it, because we have grown,
Mhm.
so we'll get different things out of whatever it is, like that book. You get entirely
Yeah.
different things out of it now than when you read it 10 years ago,
Oh, 100%.
because you're
Yeah.
an entirely different person.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's part, and catching that awareness. And if you don't catch it the first time, it'll hit you
It'll
again.
come back.
And then after that, you start getting 2x4s.
Mhm.
It's just so much easier to listen, like
Yeah.
when the book, when that something catches your attention like that, stands out, just be curious, what's making that stand out for me right now. And you've got a sense inside, and so okay, I'll go check it out, and be curious and look at it again, and just when you just follow those little trails, this life gets way easier.
Yeah. And it's so much more fun.
It gets way more fun. Yeah, that's what I was just about to
Absolutely.
say. When you
Right.
stop taking it so seriously and you just go, wait, all these things have been happening. Maybe I should look into it a little bit more. Maybe I should just get a little bit, like you said, John, curious and see where might this lead me? What might happen if I kind of pull at some of these strings and see what pulls apart at the end of the day?
Well, we had this saying between the two of us, what's going to be the surprise of the day?
Yeah, I love that.
And that surprise, depending on how you look at it, can be, ooh, great. I got a check I didn't expect, or, ooh, somebody's calling me that I didn't want to talk to. Those type of things.
Or something that disrupts the plan.
Yeah.
I tend to be pretty linear, and I've got my day planned, and I want to follow those, follow my plan. And when something disrupts that, it's like, it's unwelcome. But
Yeah, like when someone says,
often
hey,
turns
you
out
want
to
to jump
be
on my podcast today?
exactly. I mean, that would be an example. If I had planned to go somewhere, and it's, oh, okay. Yeah, I think yesterday I had something on the books, and we ended up on a call for a couple of hours, and I mean, I wouldn't have missed that for the world. So networking meetings, there's been, gosh, well, we've been, heavy at it for a year now, but there's been a bunch of them. It's like, Connie said, you want to go? I said, no, I don't really want to go.
And it's kind of like, yeah.
And I ended up going, and because I didn't feel good or something. I mean, I always had a reason, of course, but it was like, those are the ones that I felt the most resistance to were the most significant, turned out to be the most significant reason to be there. That's another little,
Yeah, so the universe kicking you in the ass going, no, really, you need to go.
You should be there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't feel like it. Yeah, well, those are the ones that you ought to be at, because there's somebody there that you need to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah.
may not be the way you'd want to connect, or it may not be a comfortable conversation,
Mm.
you know, that comfort versus safety thing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that awareness. And
Yeah.
that's all this is. It's just being aware of where you need to be,
Yeah.
where your priorities are.
And
Mm-hmm.
I would even take it to not dismissing the things that are very subtle, you
Yeah,
know, the things
exactly.
that are really easy to ignore and
Mhm.
and oh, that's not real, or I just imagined
That
that.
little
I mean,
whisperings in your
we
ear.
ignore so many things, and there's a saying that, you know, something about two fish, you know, talking, and one fish says to the other, you know, how's the water today or something, and the other fish says, what's water? And that is so
Mm.
apropos to, you know, where we are fish swimming in this sea of thoughts and feelings, and if it were to suddenly vanish, if it were suddenly we weren't in that, I think the silence and the isolation would absolutely shock us. I mean, like scare us silly. It's just like we're in it all the time, and when we're sensing, you know, what's going on in the greater society around us, you know, picking up when the mood changes. It's like the weather, you know, the same way we get affected by the barometric pressure, we're affected by the weather of the people. And you know, we're the people that we work with and interact with all the time. I mean, how many times do you, I don't, well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of times we finish each other's sentences, or
We have
I'll
to
be
after this
thinking
line.
something and it'll come out of her mouth. And
Mm.
you know, I think that's our reality. But when we're taught that doesn't exist, that's not real, it's evil or bad, then, you know, we suppress it, we ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, I think about like as children, we have things like growing pains, right? But how many times have you as a child like had a growing pain and somebody explained it, that's what it is. And it's like, but is that what it is?
Right.
Is that what you're actually experiencing? Or is there something that needs your attention?
Right.
And you need to pay attention. Maybe it's in your leg. Maybe you need to be grounded right now. There's something about what's going on in the situation. And that's one thing that I'm sad that I didn't receive as a child, is that I didn't receive that kind of direction. It was always explained away. You know, like, oh, you have a headache. We'll take some Tylenol. But why do you have a headache? Nobody ever asked me that. Nobody ever asked me that. Why would they ask me that? But really, now in my adult life, I ask myself this stuff all the time.
Good.
I'm like, wait a minute, like this happened. Well, what am I missing? Did I miss something? Or is there something that I need to be paying attention to a little bit more closely? And
Yeah.
it's just a different way to look at life. And the sad thing is I feel like a lot of kids missed that in their growing up.
But you got to look at it as a maturity thing too,
Mm.
because you've got to kind of grow into that.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did is set the foundation for you to be able to do that.
Mm.
That's all.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know.
You're right. You're right. It's
So,
just for
this is-
me, I'm like, oh, I wish I'd been able to have that thought sooner. That would have been great. But you know, it's just part of the process.
You weren't ready for it.
Yeah.
And look at it like that. Like I said, it is a maturity. It's steps that you
Mm-hmm.
had to take to be able to ask those questions of
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even like with Aubrey, like she gets really worked up over math. Like it sends her like dysregulated so fast.
I understand.
And so I'm like, yeah. So it's like, okay, so what are you feeling? Like, are you feeling not good enough? Are you feeling this? And I'll list a whole bunch of different options. She's like, I'm just frustrated. And we're trying to get more specific there. And she can't identify any of those other specific feelings. She just knows she's frustrated.
Mhm.
And she's frustrated enough with one simple subtraction question in grade 4 that she's in tears, like she's crying over it.
Right.
And she does not have the awareness of what the root cause is, even with me like coaching her and supporting her and walking her through that. But I'm at least making her curious. I'm like at least guiding her in that possibility of what could it be. And so maybe it'll get her there faster and maybe it won't. So
Right.
Well, at the very least, of course, I'm coaching, but if she can come out of that experience with not feeling like it's a deficit in her,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Then at
100%.
least she's got a lot she can build on from there.
Mhm.
I feel like with that, that's the winning equation right there, where it's like, it has nothing to do, like, it's not a deficit in you, like you said.
Yeah.
It's not you.
It's a pattern.
Yeah.
It's a pattern that we're observing and it's repeating. And so now, at very least, we can accept that the pattern's there, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to, we may not ever be able to fully understand some of the patterns that happen in our lives. That was one that I only learned that in the last couple of years was I spent my whole life trying to understand everything. I have to understand. And if it was something I didn't understand, it bothered me. I mean, I worried about not understanding it. And I guess I was like a bulldog. But no, I finally got it. Sorry, my incoming call notification there. I finally got it down that no, understanding is not required. All that's required is acceptance.
Yeah.
And different. They're very different. Acceptance is this neutral acknowledgement of just it is. Okay, there's something happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like your phone ringing
I like
twice.
my phone ringing,
That's the same as Derek. Whenever I have emotions or feelings, especially big ones, he's like, I want to understand. I'm like, screw understanding. I don't want you to understand me. I just want you to accept me and love me through it. Like, you're a man, I'm a female. We have completely different lives, completely different childhoods, ways of thinking and belief systems. Like, you're never going to understand me. Like, just accept and be here. And that is very, very difficult. Like he really wants to understand. And to him, that's a form of love, is he wants to understand me because he loves me. Yeah. And then be able to fix it. If he understands it,
Yeah.
fix it. And it's just like, that's not what I need at all. So
Well, and we finally gotten to that point of, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to
Yes.
listen to me, bitch. Okay, that's all I want.
Exactly.
I just have to offload all this. So just stand there, shut up,
Yes.
look pretty.
Learning to ask me learning to ask, is this a time when I need to help you find a solution, or is this a time to just listen?
Yeah.
I mean, I always get a clear answer to that. If I remember to ask the simple question, I get a clear answer.
Oh yeah.
And then I can do exactly what's needed. And
Well, and it takes you off
It collapses
DEFCON 5
time.
too,
Yeah.
because I'm up here and he's wondering how I got there, and does he need to worry about, it's
Yeah,
just
for
no,
sure.
you just need to.
Is she gonna go postal?
Has she already gone postal? Is
Have
this
I already
it?
gone LA?
Well,
And
and
how
here's the
far-
thing,
how
when
far
you
off
try
the
to
ledge have I
fix
gone?
it and try to understand it, that's when I'm most likely to go postal.
Exactly.
We just started reading radical acceptance or radical compassion. I can't remember which one. We got both at the same time, and it talked about silent compassion, I think, in there or somewhere. There's silent compassion came up recently in the last month, and so whenever he's trying to understand or fix it, I'm just like, silent compassion, just silent compassion. That's it. That's all I want.
Okay.
That's all I need. And that has been our saving grace since that came into our life the last month.
Nice.
It's just that matter of communication and figuring out what it is that the other person is actually trying to expel.
Well, and there's another layer that just came to mind in that the fixing thing is there can be this implied judgment that the other person isn't, is somehow deficient or isn't able of figuring it out on their own. And that's part of what creates the frustration in them. I'll figure it out. It's like,
I will
I
ask
just
you
need
if
more
I
time.
need help. Otherwise,
yeah. And that's, I think, so, we're talking about these things in terms of kind of perceived problems, but also in our growth, when we're curious and we tend to want to go faster.
Yeah.
You know, I want to learn all this stuff. I want to evolve faster and grow faster so that I don't, you know, I don't have to go through these difficult experiences. Sorry, but you know, we all grow at our own pace, and sometimes we really, really have to have these experiences. I mean,
And
I
the
just recently
other,
had to have an experience where I was in the emergency room at 3 o'clock in the morning. And
Yeah.
and it's, I mean, the what sent me there actually resolved like before we got in the car. But I didn't, you know, I wasn't capable of fully, I recognized that there was a change, but it was still necessary to go. And then after that experience, you know, my guides, I was again regrouping with my guides, and they said it was a necessary step.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
the other piece of it too is we can choose whether it's difficult, and I'm putting air quotes up too. We
Right.
can choose how we look at it. We don't have to label it as a difficult thing. It could just be like, well, who was I supposed to meet at the ER? Like, I don't
Exactly.
know, at 3
Exactly.
a.m. Like, I don't know what that was all about, but it's just like, this is one thing that I just keep saying over and over and over again. And Ashley's probably tired of hearing me say this, but I'm like, it's just part of the process.
It is.
It's just part of it. Like, I don't have to get so worked up about, well, why? How come this is what happened? And like getting so stuck in that. Instead, just being like, well, that's just what happened. Like, that's just part of the process. And
And
I'll
what you
probably
just
say that
said,
till I die.
that's your phrasing of what I just said as far as
Mhm.
acceptance versus having
Yeah.
to understand.
Yeah.
And that,
Absolutely.
It is what it is another, that's so overused in our society, but at the same time, it's a beautiful
It's
statement
true.
of acceptance.
Mhm.
It's just such a beautiful encapsulation of what acceptance is. It is what it is.
And
Mhm.
we don't know, because of our energy, what we changed in somebody else's energy that was sitting there waiting to see a doctor too.
Mm.
Could have been
Mhm.
something that subtle.
No interaction,
No interaction,
just being there.
but just being in that environment, keeping ourselves together, and accepting it. Who knows who we influenced?
That
Mm.
butterfly effect.
Yeah,
That's what they call it.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love
And I
this
don't have to
conversation.
know it. I don't have to
No.
know what I did.
No, it's not about getting credit.
No, it's not about that at all. Nor do I
Mhm.
want to know, probably most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this conversation. And to kind of wrap up a little bit, I'm curious because John, you said this, and I think Connie, you did too. You were talking about like communicating with your guides. I know like before we jumped on the podcast, you were like, I don't want to like, I can't really show because it's a podcast. I can't show people how to do it, but I'm curious if there's anything that you could give to our listeners that might help them deepen this connection with their guides.
Well,
Mm,
any kind of anything that you can practice that's a good, an effective, not good, an effective relaxation in the moment. A deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth.
yeah.
Even the 4x4 breathing is better
And just
than nothing.
relax
know?
and just kind of center yourself, focus on what you consider the highest, you know, whatever that is, you know, and just ask again, however you say it, you know, whether it's guides or God or whatever, you know, be with me now, or something like that. That's as simple as it gets.
And sometimes I'll even just go, help.
Yeah.
You know?
Help.
Exactly. And amazing what response I get out of that.
Just in your head, though.
Yeah, in my head. Yeah, I don't say it out loud, but I'll be screaming it in my head going, you know, I need some backup right here.
For something more structured, I'm gonna, I guess, plant a seed here, and you can edit this out if you don't like it. There is a friend of ours, a colleague, who started in that place, and she has spent the last roughly 40 years traveling the world sharing this information with people, and sharing structured training on exactly that. I mean, she has a very structured process of teaching people how to do that and doing it in a way that sets them up for success with that and keeps them clear.
Mhm.
And it's called an orientation profile. And her name is Sandra, sorry, I mispronounced it, Sandra. And I'm going to recommend that you guys have her as a guest. And then, if she works with people remotely, through
Mhm.
Zoom or whatever, and teaches them that exactly. And she's, licensed and trained and all of that to do that and very current with it. So that's where, if somebody really wants that, and I would strongly encourage it, because
Mhm.
I met my guides the same day I met Connie. We didn't talk about that.
Mm,
And
cool.
Meet them. You just brought them to the forefront.
I had that experience of that profile. And it's, those are the two best things I ever did. So,
Mm.
I would recommend that you have connect with her. And then if that doesn't work out, she has a website, and I'll give you guys a link to that, and you can make that work.
Cool.
Does that work for you?
I love it.
Good enough? Are you?
Yeah, I'm loving it. Thank you so much for joining us today. This really,
fun.
No
I
pleasure.
love this kind of conversation. I think Ashley and I could talk about this all day, every day, and we do. So let's be honest. But I think we're gonna call this episode of TMI Advice You Didn't Want a wrap for today. So guys, if you're listening on your favorite podcast host, go ahead and give us a 5-star. And if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and tap that like button and smash the subscribe, because we want to hang out with you longer. And if you've got questions for us, then please let us know what your questions are, or what your questions are for John and Connie. So with that, we're going to call TMI Advice You Didn't Want a wrap for today. We'll see everyone next time.